You're watching Noir Street. I'm your host, Nero Wolfe. Every story hides a secret, and every shadow hides a clue. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Subscribe, tap the like button, and join us as we drift into mystery. Chapter 1. The green ribbon was the first insult. Fritz brought it in on the breakfast tray, with the coffee and the eggs and Wolfe's grapefruit, as if it belonged there. Fritz's face, as always, was calm enough to make you feel unreasonable for having nerves. But his eyes flicked once, just once, toward the envelope. And that was Fritz's version of alarm bells. It was a heavy envelope. Cream paper. Expensive. The kind that suggests a hand that wears clean cuffs and gets what it wants without asking. Around it was tied a neat green ribbon in a bow that would have looked charming on a wreath and looked poisonous on a message. Fritz set the tray on the side table by Wolfe's chair. Wolfe, seated behind his own private rituals, picked up the envelope between thumb and forefinger as if it might leave grease. He didn't cut the ribbon. He simply regarded it. I was at my desk, doing what I call paperwork and Wolfe calls noise. I watched him. Wolfe can look at a thing and make it confess without touching it. He said, without opening the envelope, "You have lied." That was directed at me. I blinked. "Good morning to you too." Wolfe's eyes did not shift from the ribbon. "This ribbon is not for me. It is for you." "That's thoughtful," I said. "I'm a festive person. I love green." Wolfe finally looked up. The eyes were steady, mildly disgusted, and annoyingly accurate. When a man ties a ribbon to blackmail, he is either theatrical or inexperienced. In either case, he believes the presentation matters. He believes you will be sentimental. I snorted. "You're confusing me with a choir boy." Wolfe's gaze held mine. "Last Christmas Eve, you told a lie. It was not for profit. It was for kindness. Therefore, it will be used against you." I felt the skin between my shoulder blades tighten. It's a peculiar sensation, being seen through by a man who doesn't bother to stand up to do it. "That's a pretty leap," I said. "You haven't even read the thing." Wolfe's mouth compressed. "A blackmailer is rarely original. He selects leverage. What leverage do you possess that would merit ribbon stationery?" "Maybe somebody wants your orchid schedule," I said. Wolfe ignored it, the way he ignores the weather. He slid a letter opener under the ribbon and lifted. The bow loosened and fell to his blotter like a small green snake. He drew out a single sheet of paper and read it in silence. Silence in that room has weight. The old brownstone was warm. The radiators did their noisy best, and the December wind outside pressed against the windows as if trying to get invited in. But Wolfe's office has its own climate: leather, books, coffee, and Wolfe's certainty. He handed the paper across to me without a word. It was practiced, the way a man writes when he wants his words to look calm, even if his hands are sweating. "Mr. Goodwin, you told a lie on Christmas Eve at 11:20 p.m. to protect Marla Dean. You will correct that lie in the presence of Inspector Kramer, or you will pay for my silence. If you do neither, the correction will be made for you. The ribbon is green because your lie was about Christmas. Deliver $25,000 in cash to the ornament display at Hudson Arcade at 6 p.m. tomorrow." "He's got the time down to the minute." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Therefore he was present." "Or he was told by someone present," I said. "Or he's guessing and got lucky." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "He is not guessing." I stared at the green ribbon. A stupid piece of cloth, and suddenly my stomach was doing unpleasant arithmetic. Wolfe said, "You will now tell me what you lied about." I leaned back in my chair and considered my options. Option 1, pretend I didn't hear him. Option 2, lie again. Option 3, Tell the truth and watch Wolfe's eyebrows rise in that special way. That means he is disappointed with my judgment, but pleased with the puzzle. Option 3 was the only one that didn't end with Wolfe making my life worse. Last Christmas Eve, I said. Marla Dean was at her apartment on Park. There was a man there. Wolfe's eyes remained steady. Continue. The man wasn't her husband, I said. Wolfe made a small sound that might have been contempt or might have been digestion. And you were present. No, I said quickly. I wasn't present at the apartment. I was present at the lie. Wolfe's fingers pressed together, tips touching. Explain. I did, because Wolfe had that look that says he will sit there until the sun goes out, and the sun has better things to do. It was about 11, I said. I got a call, a woman's voice. Marla. She said she needed help, and she couldn't call the police. I went, not to her apartment. She told me not to. She told me to meet her on Madison near the church on 52nd. Wolfe's lips tightened. In the street, on Christmas Eve, idiotic. I was feeling generous, I said. She was shaking. She said her husband had been at a party, and she'd told him she'd go to her sister's. Instead, she'd made a mistake, a private mistake. Wolfe's eyes stayed on me, and I felt again that pressure between my shoulder blades. She begged me, I said. Not for money, for cover. She said if anyone knew where she'd really been that night, it would destroy her. She said her husband would ruin her, and not quietly, Wolfe said. And you covered. I did, I admitted. Because she looked like a woman about to fall through the sidewalk. I told her I'd drive her home. On the way, we ran into Inspector Kramer and Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins. Wolfe's mouth twitched. Interest now, sharp. They were on a call, I said. Noise complaint at Marla's building. A doorman had called it in. Somebody had run out of a service entrance. Kramer saw me with Marla and started asking why she was out at that hour and why she looked like she'd been chased. Wolfe said, and you lied. I told him. I said that she'd been with me at a charity rehearsal, that she'd stepped out for air and got rattled by a drunk on the street. I made it sound harmless and dull. Kramer bought it because he was in a hurry and because he has a soft spot for women who look frightened. Wolfe leaned back slightly. And Marla Dean's husband, Clifford Dean. I said, money, real estate, temper. The kind of man who shakes hands like he's testing a wrench. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. So you lied to the police to conceal adultery. When you put it that way, I said, it sounds less noble. It is less noble, Wolfe said. It is foolish. I tried for a grin. Foolish is my brand. It comes free with the job. Wolfe ignored my charm the way he ignores bad cooking. The lie is now being exploited. Therefore, the adultery is not the center. Something else is. Like what? I asked. Wolfe tapped the blackmail note with a thick finger. The precision, the time, the venue selected for payment, an ornament display in a public arcade. The ribbon. This is not a desperate man. This is a man arranging a transaction. Before I could respond, Fritz appeared in the doorway. Mr. Wolfe, Mrs. Dean is here. Wolfe's eyes lifted. Send her in. Marla Dean entered like someone trying to look normal and failing by a fraction of an inch. She was in her 30s, pretty in a careful way, with dark hair pinned back and a winter coat that cost more than my first car. Her hands were gloved, and she kept them clenched together as if the gloves were the only thing holding her. She saw me and stopped. Relief crossed her face. Then fear jumped in and pushed it aside. Archie, she said, and the way she said it made me wish I'd never lied for anyone in my life, which would have been a dull career choice. Wolfe indicated the red leather chair. Sit down, Mrs. Dean. She sat as if the chair might accuse her. Her eyes flicked to Wolfe. Mr. Wolfe, I didn't want to come, Archie said. You were discreet. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Archie says many things. I held up the note. Marla, you got one of these. Her face paled. Yes. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Show it to me. She reached into her handbag with trembling fingers and produced an envelope. Also cream. Also expensive. Also tied with a green ribbon. Mine had been theatrical. Hers looked ceremonial. She handed it to Wolfe as if it might burn. Wolfe read it, then handed it to me. It was similar, but the terms were different. Mrs. Dean, your Christmas Eve mistake is known. Mr. Goodwin lied for you. I require your cooperation now. You will bring Clifford Dean to St. Bartholomew's at 10 p.m. tonight for a private conversation. If you refuse, the truth will be delivered to him with proof. You will not warn Mr. Wolfe. You will not warn Mr. Goodwin. You will be obedient if you wish to remain married. Marla's breath came shallow. He said he has proof. Proof of where I was, proof of who. If Clifford sees it, your marriage may be harmed, Wolfe said, tone dry. That is not a capital offense. Her eyes flashed. You don't understand. Clifford doesn't just leave, he destroys. Then perhaps he should be destroyed, Wolfe said mildly. Marla stared at him as if he'd suggested burning down the city. Mr. Wolfe, please, I can't have a scandal, not now. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Why? Not now. She hesitated. Her gloved hands tightened. Because my father is ill. The foundation, the board. If there's a scandal, Wolfe's voice cut in sharper. Your foundation. The Dean Family Relief Fund, she whispered. I blinked. Relief Fund, Christmas. Wolfe's gaze held her. Ah, Marla swallowed. It's important work. It is also money, Wolfe said. Money attracts arrangement. She looked at me again, desperate. Archie, tell him I didn't mean. I know, I said gently. But it happened. Wolfe's eyes remained on Marla. Who was the man? Marla's face tightened. I won't. Wolfe's voice went cold. Mrs. Dean, you have come into my house with a problem and asked for help. I do not help in the dark. Either you illuminate it, or you leave and allow your blackmailer to conduct your life like a puppet show. Marla's throat worked. Her eyes filled, not with tears yet, but with the threat of them. His name doesn't matter, she whispered. He worked for the foundation, accounting he was dismissed last month. Wolfe's eyebrows rose a fraction. Dismissed for what? For discrepancies, Marla said, and her voice cracked. He said it was nothing. He said it was a misunderstanding. My father insisted. He said Peter couldn't be trusted. Wolfe leaned back, fingers together again. And now the man you dismissed has returned with blackmail tied in ribbon. How seasonal, I said. Marla, did you see him? Is it Peter Kells for sure? She shook her head. Number he doesn't come himself, he calls. He sends notes. She stopped, swallowing. He knows everything. Wolfe tapped the paper once. He knows enough. She leaned forward, voice low and frantic. Mr. Wolfe, please. I don't need the police. I need this to go away. Quietly, if Clifford learns. She broke off, and for the first time tears actually arrived, sliding down without permission. I made one mistake. One. Archie tried to help me. That's all. Wolfe watched her with that peculiar neutrality he reserves for emotion. Not cruel, not kind, simply unimpressed. Then he said, very softly, you chose kindness over truth, and now kindness will be buried. It was the line he'd promised, and hearing it spoken aloud made the office feel colder. Marla stared at him. What does that mean? It means, Wolfe said, that your blackmailer is not satisfied with silence. He is arranging something. The church meeting is not for your husband's benefit. It is for his. I felt my stomach tighten again. Wolfe, you think this is bigger than adultery. I am certain, Wolfe said. He turned his gaze to me. Goodwin, you will retrieve every detail you can recall of that Christmas Eve encounter. Time, location, doorman, any vehicle, any face. You will also find Mr. Peter Kells quietly. I opened my mouth. Wolfe raised a finger. I shut it again. He does that, he continued. Mrs. Dean, you will do nothing. You will not go to the church. You will not contact your husband. You will remain available. Fritz will prepare tea. It may assist your nerves, though it cannot improve your judgment. Marla started to protest, then saw Wolfe's expression and stopped. She nodded, small, frightened. The doorbell rang. Fritz's footsteps moved in the hall. A moment later he returned, his calm slightly stretched, and said, "Mr. Wolfe, Inspector Kramer is here." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Of course he is. I felt my pulse jump. Kramer at the door in the middle of this meant one thing: my lie had acquired legs. Wolfe looked at me as if reading my thoughts. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "your kindness is already being buried. The question is, who is holding the shovel?" And from the hall came Kramer's voice, loud, impatient, and entirely unwelcome. "Wolfe, open up. I got questions about Christmas Eve." Chapter 2. Inspector Kramer came in like a draft that had paid taxes, loud, cold, and entitled to occupy space. He filled Wolfe's doorway with overcoat and indignation, Stebbins trailing behind him with a notebook and the expression of a man hoping the world will stop giving him errands. Kramer's eyes landed on Marla Dean in the red leather chair, took in her wet lashes and clenched hands, and his face got the satisfied look of a hound catching scent. "Well," he said, "ain't this cozy?" Wolfe didn't rise. He didn't welcome. He simply stared at Kramer as if he were a stain the rug had refused to absorb. "Inspector," Wolfe said, "you are obstructing my air." Kramer ignored that. He jabbed a finger toward me. "Goodwin, Christmas Eve. 11:20, you told me a story." "I tell you lots of stories," I said. "You keep showing up for sequels." "You told me Mrs. Dean was with you," Kramer snapped, "at a charity rehearsal." Marla's breath caught. I could feel her fear like heat. Wolfe's voice stayed level. "If you have come to accuse my assistant of perjury, do it elsewhere. He is not paid to be insulted in my office. He is paid to be insulted by me." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "I'm not accusing him, not yet. I'm asking why Northside Shelter's fundraiser safe got cracked open last night, and why your name came up when I started asking questions." That changed the temperature in the room. Even Marla stopped breathing for a second. "Northside Shelter," I repeated. "That's where the lie lands." Kramer's mouth twisted. "Yeah, Shelter had a holiday fundraiser. Corporate folks, donors, gift cards for families. This morning the finance office found their safe open, no forced entry, and the gift cards gone." Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Gift cards, not cash," Kramer said, almost grudgingly. "Cards, hundreds of them, enough to make a nice Christmas for a lot of people. Someone turned it into a lousy one." Wolfe's fingers touched together. "Who had access to the safe?" Kramer glanced at Stebbins, who read from his notes. "Finance officer, Tom Baird, and the executive director, Helena Voss, and the treasurer, Hal Rudd." Wolfe's eyes flicked once to me. "And why does my assistant's name come up?" Kramer's mouth tightened. "Because Baird told somebody last week he had a meeting set up with a guy named Archie Goodwin. Said it was about covering something up." Marla made a small sound. I turned to her. "Did you ever?" She shook her head quickly, terrified. "Number, I never spoke to him. I don't even know." Wolfe cut in. "Inspector, are you suggesting Mr. Baird was blackmailing my assistant?" Kramer's face reddened. "I'm suggesting your boy is in the middle of something, and now there's theft at a shelter, and your name is floating around like confetti." I said, "Kramer, I've never met Tom Baird in my life. You're meeting him now." Kramer growled. "Because he's not answering questions." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Why not?" Kramer's expression shifted. It wasn't triumph now. It was irritation. The irritation of a man forced to admit the case has teeth. "Because Baird's dead," he said. The words hit Marla like a shove. Her hands flew to her mouth. Stebbins looked down at his notebook as if it could hide him. Wolfe didn't blink. "How?" "Alley behind the shelter," Kramer said. "This morning, stabbed twice. Not robbed. Wallet still there. Watch still there. Whoever did it wasn't shopping." Wolfe's gaze held Kramer's. "Time of death." "Early," Kramer said. "Before dawn. Dumpster man found him." Wolfe leaned back slightly. So Mr. Baird discovered the theft, or participated in it, and was killed before he could speak. Kramer grunted. That's what I'm thinking. Wolfe's voice was dry. No, Inspector. That is what you are feeling. Thinking requires structure. Kramer glared. You got structure? Fine. Explain why a guy gets killed over gift cards. Wolfe's eyes flicked to Marla. Mrs. Dean, I advise you to listen carefully. It may teach you the price of one mistake. Marla's voice was thin. Mr. Wolfe, please. I don't want. You do not want consequences, Wolfe said. Unfortunately, you have purchased them. He turned to me. Goodwin, bring me your telephone. I handed it over. Wolfe dialed a number from memory. One of those numbers he keeps filed away with names and weaknesses. Lon Cohen answered with his usual brisk cheerfulness, which lasted exactly 1 second. Wolfe, Lon said. What's wrong? Wolfe's voice stayed calm. Lon, do you know Northside Shelter? Sure, Lon said. They do the big holiday push. Why? Because their finance officer is dead, Wolfe said. And their safe is empty of gift cards. There was a pause. I could almost hear Lon's newsroom instincts waking up and stretching. Dead how? Lon demanded. Stabbed, Wolfe replied. Lon, I want to know everything about Tom Baird, and Helena Voss that is not in a brochure. Quietly. Lon exhaled. You're asking for dirt. I am asking for facts, Wolfe corrected. Dirt is merely facts that have been neglected. Lon grumbled. All right, I'll call you back. Wolfe hung up and regarded Kramer. Inspector, are you aware of any connection between Tom Baird and Mrs. Dean? Kramer hesitated. Not yet. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Not yet is not an answer. Kramer scowled. Mrs. Dean's foundation donates to a lot of charities. Northside's on the list. That's the only connection I've got. Marla's face went even paler. My father approved those grants. Wolfe nodded once. Then the connection is money. Kramer snorted. Everything's money to you. Yes, Wolfe said, because everything is. He looked at me. Your lie placed Mrs. Dean under your protection on Christmas Eve. It has now been transformed into a lever. That lever is being used to move money from a safe and silence a finance officer. That's a reach, Kramer snapped. You're saying Goodwin's lie caused a theft. Wolfe's eyes turned icy. Number, I am saying the same hand arranged both, because both serve the same purpose. Control. I opened my mouth to make a remark and got cut off by the doorbell again. Fritz appeared in the doorway and said quietly, Mr. Wolfe, there is an envelope for Mr. Goodwin. That did it. Even Kramer shut up. Fritz came in with the envelope on a small tray as if it were dessert. It wasn't dessert. It was cream paper again, but this time there was no ribbon, just a ragged tear at the corner and a smear of something dark. Blood, dried and ugly. My stomach tightened. I took it, opened it carefully, and read, Mr. Goodwin, you have been heard. The shelter was the first correction. The next correction will be Mrs. Dean. If you speak to Inspector Kramer again, she will bleed before midnight. Do not attempt cleverness. You are not clever enough. Marla made a choking sound. Oh God. Kramer snatched for the letter. I held it up, out of reach. Easy, I said. This is addressed to my cleverness. Kramer growled. That's evidence. It's also a gun pointed at a woman in my chair, Wolfe said coldly. Kramer hesitated, then sat because Wolfe's tone had the same authority as a judge's gavel, only with better vocabulary. Wolfe held out his hand. Mr. Goodwin. I gave him the note. Wolfe read it once, then again, then laid it on his blotter as if pinning an insect. He said, very quietly, Good. Now we have confirmation. Confirmation of what? I asked, though I knew the answer was going to irritate me. Of intent, Wolfe replied. This man is not bargaining. Kramer barked a laugh. Looks like bargaining to me. Speak. And she dies. Wolfe's gaze flicked to Kramer with faint contempt. That is not bargaining. That is scheduling. He turned his eyes to me. Mr. Baird was found dead in an alley after the safe was opened. Now Mrs. Dean is threatened before midnight. Note the precision. Note the sequence: theft, murder, threat. He is not seeking money as an end. He is using money as a tool to direct behavior and remove obstacles. I said. Meaning Tom Baird was an obstacle, clearly, Wolfe said. He either discovered the theft, facilitated it, or possessed information the blackmailer required to remain concealed. Therefore, he was eliminated. Marla's voice trembled. Mr. Wolfe, please. I can't. Wolfe's tone softened only enough to be efficient. Mrs. Dean, you will remain here. Fritz will take you to the south room and stay nearby. You will not leave my house until I permit it. Kramer stood again. You can't keep a witness. Wolfe cut him off. Inspector, I can keep a frightened woman safe in my own home. You apparently cannot keep a finance officer safe in his alley. Kramer's face reddened. Wolfe, sit. Wolfe said again. Kramer sat again. Stebbins looked faintly pleased, which was probably the highlight of his week. Wolfe turned to me. Goodwin, we will go to Northside Shelter. Kramer snapped. No, he won't. This is a police matter. Wolfe's eyes were calm and deadly. Inspector, your methods have already produced a corpse. If you wish more, continue. If you wish fewer, allow Mr. Goodwin to do what he does best. Listen, observe, and irritate. Kramer glared. I'll send men. You will, Wolfe agreed, but not in uniform, not loudly. Your presence will warn our scheduler. I said. Wolfe, what am I looking for? Wolfe's mouth tightened. Access motive, and the identity of the man who knows your Christmas Eve lie down to the minute. He looked at Marla. Mrs. Dean, who else knew where you were that night? Marla's eyes flicked helplessly. No one, only Peter Kells might have guessed, because he kept records. He watched everything. Wolfe nodded once. Then find the man she described. He turned to me again. You will speak to Helena Voss. You will examine the safe. You will learn how it was opened without force. You will determine whether Tom Baird intended to meet you, and if so, why, and you will do it quickly. Kramer muttered, This is crazy. Wolfe ignored him. He looked at the blood-smudged corner of the note as if it were a clue in itself. Also, he added, you will learn whether the blood is Mr. Baird's. I stared. You think the blackmailer used Baird's blood to smear the note? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. I think he used someone's blood. That suggests proximity to the murder. Proximity creates risk. Risk makes men hurry. Men who hurry make mistakes. Greet, I said. We just need him to hurry while holding a knife. Wolfe's voice stayed level. Precisely. Fritz came in quietly and touched Marla's shoulder. Mrs. Dean, he said gently, come, please. Marla rose trembling and looked at me as if I could fix this with a joke. I couldn't. She left with Fritz, her fear trailing behind her like a shadow. Kramer stood again, impatient. I'm not leaving you alone with this, Wolfe. Wolfe's gaze flicked to him. You will do as you like. But if Mrs. Dean is harmed, Inspector, I will make it my business to ensure your name is associated with the failure. Kramer's mouth opened-closed. Then he growled, Stebbins, call in plain clothes at Northside, quiet, and get me everything on Tom Baird. Stebbins scribbled, looking almost cheerful. Wolfe turned to me. Go. I stood, grabbed my coat, and felt the weight of the new note in my pocket like a stone as I reached the door. Wolfe's voice stopped me. Soft, certain. Mr. Goodwin, he said. This man has made a calendar. He is filling the days. I looked back. And we're on it. Wolfe's eyes were flat. Yes, and if we do not erase his next appointment, he will keep scheduling until he reaches the one he truly wants. What's that? I asked. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Your confession, publicly, with Inspector Kramer listening. I went out into the December wind with the city's Christmas lights, blinking as if nothing in the world could be urgent. And I had the uncomfortable feeling that somewhere, in some warm place, A man was checking the time and deciding whether Marla Dean would still be breathing at midnight. Chapter 3 Northside Shelter sat on a side street that tried to look decent by keeping its head down. The building itself was plain brick with a hopeful sign, and the sidewalk outside had that special New York mixture of slush, cigarette ends, and people hurrying past guilt the way you hurry past a beggar. Eyes forward, pace quick, conscience carefully muffled, Wolfe disliked leaving his house on principle, on habit, and on art. Getting him out of the brownstone is like getting a rhinoceros into a taxi. It can be done, but nobody enjoys it. This time, he did it without even a full sermon about the indignities of public air. That alone told me the scheduler's calendar had gotten under his skin. We went in Wolfe's car with me driving, Wolfe in the back seat as if the city were an unpleasant documentary, and Marla Dean wedged in beside him, looking like a woman who had been told to sit still on a trapdoor. Fritz had protested once, softly, and Wolfe had silenced him with one of those looks that says safety is a luxury and logic is not. "Mrs. Dean," Wolfe had said, "your presence will be useful." Marla had whispered, "Useful for what?" "To reveal liars," Wolfe replied. "They react to what they fear." She didn't like it, but she came anyway, because fear makes people obedient when reason fails. At the shelter entrance, a volunteer in a Santa hat smiled at us, then saw Wolfe's size and expression, and lost the smile the way you lose a coin down a grate, fast and permanent. "We're not open to the public yet," she stammered. Wolfe's voice was mild and dreadful. "Then you are fortunate. I am not the public." I showed my credentials such as they were, my face, my confidence, and the name Nero Wolfe. That name works like a warrant on the right people. We were led through a corridor that smelled of disinfectant and cheap coffee into an office suite on the second floor. The finance office was set apart like a small fortress. Metal door, keypad, little window that suggested somebody inside. Expected trouble. A man in shirt sleeves met us at the threshold. He was in his late 50s, narrow-faced, with a careful haircut and the nervous energy of a bookkeeper who has spent his life avoiding fire and has just been handed a match. "I'm Hal Rudd," he said quickly. "Treasurer. Thank you for coming, Mr. Wolfe. Inspector Kramer said you were helping." Wolfe didn't shake hands. He didn't sit. He simply looked at Hal Rudd as if assessing his value per pound. "I am not helping Inspector Kramer," Wolfe said. "I am helping myself. It is occasionally the same thing." Rudd swallowed. "Of course." A second person appeared behind him. A woman in a tailored coat, hair pinned perfectly, expression practiced into concern. She had a clipboard in her hand, which is the modern equivalent of armor. "Nora Spence," she said. "Public relations. We appreciate your discretion." Wolfe's eyes moved to her clipboard. "If you require discretion, Miss Spence, you have selected an odd profession." She blinked, smile tightening. "We simply want to avoid panic. Donations are sensitive. Money is always sensitive," Wolfe replied. "It squeals when touched." A third man came in from a side door. He was broad, shouldered, solid with the deliberate stillness of someone paid to be in the way. His suit was inexpensive but clean, and his eyes had that flat watchfulness that makes you check your own pockets out of habit. "Clay Mercer," he said. "Security." Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly at the name, not from recognition, but from annoyance at coincidence. "Mr. Mercer," Wolfe said, "I am told a safe was opened without force." Clay Mercer's mouth stayed neutral. No sign of a break. "In." "Then you have failed," Wolfe said pleasantly, and moved past him into the finance office. I followed, and Marla followed with a hesitation that read like a prayer. The safe sat against the far wall, a heavy grey thing with a dial and a handle. The door was closed now, but the handle had something tied to it, a green ribbon. Not just any green ribbon. The same shade as the one tied to the blackmail notes. Bright enough to look cheerful, smooth enough to feel expensive, and tied with the same neat bow that said the hand behind it took pride in presentation. Marla made a small sound in her throat. Her fingers went white against her handbag strap. I stepped closer. The ribbon wasn't frayed. It wasn't hurried. It was placed. Wolfe didn't touch it. He stared at it, eyes half-lidded. And for a moment he looked as if the ribbon had personally offended him. "It is identical," he said. Rudd's face tightened. "We found it this morning, after Tom." Wolfe's gaze shifted to him. "You did not remove it." "We didn't know if—" Rudd gestured helplessly. "Evidence," Wolfe grunted. "Instinct, at least." Nora Spence stepped forward, clipboard hugged to her like a shield. "Mr. Wolfe, we've been fully cooperative. Inspector Kramer has officers downstairs. We've given statements. Wolfe raised a finger. Nora stopped mid-sentence, as neatly as a radio turning off. "Miss Spence," Wolfe said, "you have one of two habits. Either you speak excessively because you are frightened, or you speak excessively because you are concealing. Which is it?" Her cheeks colored. "Neither. I'm simply responsible." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Responsibility is not loquacity." I cleared my throat. "Mr. Rudd, who has the combination?" Rudd answered too fast. "Only me and Tom Baird did, and Miss Voss." Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Miss Voss is absent. She's with Inspector Kramer," Nora said quickly. "Downstairs talking to donors on the phone, managing damage." Wolfe snorted softly. "Managing panic while a corpse cools, admirable." Clay Mercer said nothing. He watched. His eyes kept moving, taking inventory of the room. Safe, ribbon, Wolfe, me, Marla. Security men see people the way bartenders see drunks, by how much trouble they will be when they fall. A fourth person entered, then late and quiet, and I liked him least immediately because he moved like he owned the hallway. He was younger, mid-30s, athletic, with a jacket that smelled faintly of diesel and cold air. He had a driver's posture, shoulders ready to lift boxes, and a driver's eyes that kept checking exits. "Seth Ward," he said. "I drive for the shelter deliveries, pickups." His gaze went to Marla and stuck there a beat too long, like a man who sees a face from a photograph and wants to make sure it matches. Marla noticed. Her chin lifted slightly. Instinctive defense Wolfe noticed too. Wolfe notices the way a cat notices a mouse twitch. "Mr. Ward," Wolfe said, "you are not a treasurer. Why are you here?" Seth swallowed. "Mr. Rudd asked me. Tom asked me, before. I was supposed to help with the fundraiser count. I didn't." He stopped, eyes sliding again to Marla. "I didn't know she'd be here." Wolfe's voice went colder by a degree. "Why would you know Mrs. Dean at all?" Seth's mouth opened, closed. Then he said, "Everybody knows her donor. The Dean Fund." That was plausible, but his eyes had said more than his mouth. I said lightly, "Sure, she's on posters. She's practically seasonal decor." Marla's lips tightened. She wasn't used to being decor in rooms like this. She was used to being the reason rooms like this existed. Wolfe stepped toward the safe. He still didn't touch the ribbon. He examined the dial, the seam, the hinge. He did it with the same attention he gives a menu. Precise, unsentimental, and certain. The truth is hiding in the details. "Opened without force," Wolfe murmured. "Then either the combination was used, or the mechanism was compromised by someone with skill." Clay Mercer said, "No tool marks." Wolfe looked at him. "Then you did not look, or you did not know what to look for." Clay's jaw tightened. I looked. Wolfe's tone stayed mild. "And yet a safe in your building was opened and gift cards vanished. Now a finance officer is dead. Your competence is not persuasive." Clay Mercer's eyes flicked once, quick, controlled, toward Nora Spence. The glance was small, but it had meaning. Coordination, reassurance, script. I saw it, Wolfe. Certainly saw it. Nora smiled a little too hard. "Mr. Wolfe, we're all shocked. Tom was a good man." Wolfe's eyes stayed on her. "Good men rarely die because a safe is opened. Useful men do." Rudd's hands trembled slightly. "Tom wasn't. He wasn't involved. He was careful. Careful men die too," Wolfe said, "but usually after someone else makes them careless." I moved closer to the desk. There were file folders neatly stacked, a computer monitor dark, and a small plastic tray that had held gift cards, now empty except for a few cardboard separators. On the wall was a whiteboard with neat columns. Donors, amounts, Delaware, livered, distributed. Someone had written Christmas Eve target in red marker, a schedule. The word from Wolfe's mouth came back. Scheduling. I said, where were the gift cards kept before they went into the safe? Rudd pointed. In that cabinet. Locked. And the keys? I asked. Rudd hesitated. Nora answered smoothly. Facilities has a master ring. Tom had one. Hal had one. Clay has security access. Clay Mercer's expression didn't change. I can open doors, not safes. Wolfe's voice cut in. The ribbon was placed after the theft. Nora blinked. How can you know that? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Because it is unnecessary to the theft and essential to the message. It is for Mr. Goodwin and Mrs. Dean. It is an announcement I was here, and I will be here again. Marla's breath hitched. Seth Ward's gaze went to her again, quick, like a habit. Wolfe saw it and said, Mr. Ward. Seth looked up too fast. Yes, you have now glanced at Mrs. Dean 4 times, Wolfe said calmly. That is either admiration or recognition. Which is it? Marla stiffened. Nora Spence's smile faltered. Hal Rudd looked as if he might faint. Seth's face flushed. I know. She's... Wolfe's voice remained level. Answer. Seth swallowed hard. Recognition, he admitted. I saw her last Christmas Eve. The room snapped tighter. Marla's voice came small. What? Seth's eyes darted to Nora. Then to Clay, then back to Wolfe. I was driving, he said. Not here. I was doing a pickup run, donor gifts. Late, we had a last-minute pledge. I was told to meet someone near St. Bartholomew's. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. At approximately 11:20, Seth nodded, uneasy. Around then, a woman got into a car. Another car. I saw her in the streetlight. It was her. Marla's face went grey. That's impossible, I said carefully. Seth, are you sure? He nodded. Yes. I remember because she looked scared, and because I thought, why is she out on Christmas Eve like that? Wolfe's voice was cool. And who told you to meet someone near St. Bartholomew's? Seth hesitated. Wolfe's tone sharpened. Mr. Ward. Seth's shoulders sagged. Tom, he whispered. Tom Baird told me. He said it was important. He said it was cleaning up. Rudd's face crumpled. Tom wouldn't. Wolfe, cut him off, Mr. Rudd. Your belief is irrelevant. Facts are speaking, Nora Spence said quickly. This is ridiculous. Tom was handling logistics. Wolfe's gaze snapped to her. Miss Spence, you are again reading from a script. Her mouth tightened. We're in crisis. We need consistent messaging. Wolfe's voice was dry as dust. Truth is consistent. Fabrication requires rehearsal. At that, Clay Mercer shifted his weight slightly. His hand moved toward his jacket pocket, not dramatically, just reflexively. Saul Panzer wasn't with us. Wolfe hadn't introduced him into this affair yet, and I suddenly wished he were, because a security man with twitchy pockets makes me feel old-fashioned about my life expectancy. Wolfe noticed the movement and said, without raising his voice, Mr. Mercer, if you are reaching for a weapon, stop. Clay froze. His hand withdrew slowly. He tried for a smile and failed. No weapon, just phone. Then take it out and show it, Wolfe said. Clay hesitated a fraction too long, then produced a phone. Wolfe nodded once, satisfied. Not because the phone proved innocence, but because the hesitation proved something else, pressure. Wolfe turned back to the safe, and now he did touch the ribbon. Only at the end, pinching it delicately between thick fingers as if it were contaminated. He examined the knot, and then he looked up, eyes hard. This knot, Wolfe said. was tied by someone practiced, not a volunteer, not a casual donor, someone who has tied hundreds of ribbons. Nora's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Wolfe's voice stayed calm. It means the blackmailer is close to supplies and people, close enough to touch the safe handle without being challenged, close enough to know the timing of Mr. Goodwin's lie, close enough to know how the shelter operates. I said, inside. Wolfe nodded once. Inside. Rudd's voice trembled. You're accusing us? I am concluding, Wolfe replied. There is a difference. Seth Ward was staring at Marla now, no longer glancing. His eyes had that strained, guilty look of a man who has realized he is standing in the middle of someone else's crime, and has just been noticed by the only man in the room who can count to 10 without moving his lips. Marla's voice was thin. Why would someone here threaten me? Wolfe looked at her with faint impatience. Because you are a lever. Your reputation, your marriage, your foundation. These are mechanisms. Someone is using them to move money. Nora Spence lifted her chin. Mr. Wolfe, this is outrageous. We are a charity. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Charity is an excellent disguise. It allows theft to wear righteousness and murder to wear urgency. He turned to me. Goodwin, you will speak to each of them separately. Mr. Rudd, Miss Spence, Mr. Mercer, Mr. Ward. You will listen not to their words, but to their pauses. Kramer's voice boomed from the corridor outside, the unmistakable sound of him arriving late to his own party. Wolfe, where the hell are you? Wolfe's mouth tightened. And you will keep Inspector Kramer from trampling evidence with his feet and his voice. That's my job, I muttered. Wolfe's eyes held mine. And Archie, observe Mr. Ward. His attention to Mrs. Dean is not accidental. It is fear. Marla whispered. Fear of what? Wolfe's answer was quiet and chilling. Fear of the person who told him where to be at 11:20 on Christmas Eve. Kramer's footsteps hit the doorway. Wolfe didn't look at him. Wolfe looked at the green ribbon in his hand as if it were a signature, and said softly, almost to himself, Our scheduler is not outside looking in. He is inside, touching the door. Chapter 4. Wolfe sat behind his desk with the green ribbon laid out in front of him like a captured flag. The office was warm. The December wind was still worrying the windows, and Fritz had brought coffee with the air of a man delivering civilization by the cup. Wolfe ignored the coffee until it reached the exact temperature he considered tolerable, then sipped as if judging it in court. I stood near the desk holding the 2 notes, the one for me, the one for Marla, like a man holding a pair of snakes by the tails. Wolfe said, Bring me the envelopes. They're the same kind, I said. Bring them, he repeated. That tone means he is not discussing. I handed them over. Wolfe didn't open them. He didn't need to. He examined the paper edges. The flap, the fibers exposed where the corner had been torn and smeared. He held them up to the light from the window, then to the lamp, then laid them flat and touched them with a fingertip. Archie, I said, you're watching him fondle stationery. That's how you know your life is in the hands of a genius. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. If you continue to chatter, I will arrange for you to be blackmailed by someone with better taste. He returned to the envelopes. The paper is not merely expensive, it is specific. Meaning? I asked. Wolfe reached to the corner of his desk and pulled out a small stack of printed matter. Pamphlets, programs, the kind of glossy charity material people skim and discard without reading, because guilt has a short attention span. I asked Mr. Cohen for Northside Shelter's fundraiser program, Wolfe said. He supplied it within 10 minutes, naturally, because he is incapable of refusing to meddle. He laid the program beside the blackmail note. At a glance they looked similar. Cream tone, smooth finish. But Wolfe's eyes went narrower, and he lifted the program and tore a tiny strip from the inside margin with the casual brutality of a man who does not respect pamphlets. Marla, sitting stiffly in the red leather chair, gasped, Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe didn't look at her. He aligned the torn strip against the torn edge of my note like a puzzle piece. It fit, not perfectly, because he hadn't torn from the exact same sheet, but close enough that even my non-expert eyes saw it, the same fiber pattern, the same thickness, the same faint watermark line when angled. The blackmail paper, Wolfe said, was torn from the shelter's fundraiser program stock. Marla's breath came fast. That's impossible. On the contrary, Wolfe said, it is very possible. It proves internal access. Your blackmailer is not a romantic villain with a stationery store account. He is a practical man using what is available, I said. So the shelter's inner circle isn't just acting. They're close enough to touch the supply closet. Wolfe nodded once. Yes. And note the cruelty. He uses charitable paper to threaten you. He enjoys irony. Marla's voice trembled. Why me? Why now? Wolfe looked at her then, and his expression wasn't soft. But it was focused. Because you are convenient. You have money. You have reputation. You have a mistake that can be turned into a weapon, I said, and I'm the handle. Wolfe's mouth tightened. You are the shovel, Archie. That stopped me because Wolfe doesn't use metaphors casually. When he does, he means it. A shovel, I repeated. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Your lie to Inspector Kramer is being used as an implement to dig, to bury. The grave will be lined with plausibility and filled with scandal. When the blackmailer is ready, he will dump the truth. Selectively, and you will be standing on the edge holding the tool. Marla's eyes widened. He wants to ruin Archie. He wants to ruin you, Wolfe corrected. Archie is collateral. He is always collateral. I tried to grin. It didn't come off. Wolfe looked at me. You will now take a walk. What kind? I asked. The kind behind Mr. Rudd, Wolfe said. I would do it myself, but I am not dressed for the sidewalk, and I refuse to acquire pneumonia for your sentimental lie. Marla's face pinched. Hal Rudd, the treasurer? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Mr. Rudd is nervous, conscientious, and surrounded by a crisis. Those qualities produce predictable behavior. He will attempt to make arrangements, either to protect the shelter or to protect himself, watch which. Kramer had left in a storm after the shelter visit, grumbling about interference and evidence and the impossibility of dealing with a fat man who didn't respect badges. He had also ordered plainclothes men around Northside, which meant there would be enough police presence to make a guilty man cautious and an innocent man miserable. That suited Wolfe. Wolfe likes guilty men cautious. They make small, precise mistakes. I took my coat and went out into the December afternoon, where the city was dressed for Christmas, the way an old woman is dressed for company, bright on the outside, cold underneath. Hal Rudd left the shelter at 4, carrying a briefcase too tightly. He didn't head toward the subway like a normal man. He headed the other way briskly, as if late for a private appointment. I followed at a comfortable distance, the way you follow a man without making him feel followed. It helps if you look like you're thinking about dinner. My face has been trained for that. Rudd turned down a side street that had no decorations and no shoppers, just grey snow piled against the curb and a line of service doors. He slowed near a recessed doorway and glanced around. That glance wasn't casual. It was the glance of a man who expects to be seen and hopes he is not. A figure stepped out of the recess, a man in a city facilities coat. It looked official, dark green with a patch on the shoulder, reflective strip, heavy work boots, the kind of coat that lets a man enter any building in New York without questions, because people assume he is there to fix something they don't understand. The facilities man kept his head down. His hands were in his pockets. He didn't look like a city worker the way Fritz looks like a chef. He looked like a costume. Rudd spoke first, voice low. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the movement. Rudd's mouth working fast, the facilities man listening without expression. Then Rudd opened his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. Not cream paper this time, brown, thick. The kind you use for cash when you don't want it to look like cash. He handed it over. The facilities man took it, slid it into his coat, and nodded once. Then he reached into his pocket and handed Rudd something small. Flat, quick, a key, a card, a slip of paper. Whatever it was, Rudd grabbed it like a drowning man grabbing a rope, and his shoulders loosened slightly, just enough to show relief. The facilities man turned and walked away without hurry. Rudd stood for a second, looking down at his hand, then snapped his briefcase shut and hurried back the way he had come. I followed him only long enough to confirm he was returning to the shelter. Then I turned and went after the facilities man, because in my experience, the man in the uniform is always more interesting than the man paying him. The facilities man didn't go toward a city garage. He went toward traffic. He crossed the avenue, slipped into the flow of pedestrians, and then ducked into a coffee shop that had no Christmas music and no charm. Inside, he took off his cap, revealing close cropped hair and a face that was too sharp for municipal boredom. He sat at a table near the back and pulled out a phone. I didn't sit with him. That would have been impolite. Instead, I took a position by the window outside, pretending to study the menu posted on the glass. I caught the reflection of his hands moving, his head angled toward the phone, his jaw tight. He looked up once, and for a moment our eyes met through the glass. He froze, not like a startled man, like a trained man recognizing a variable. Then he smiled faintly, and the smile was not friendly. It was acknowledgement. He lifted his coffee cup slightly, a small toast. I moved on, because if a man toasts you from inside a cheap coffee shop while wearing a city facilities coat, it means he has already decided you are part of the schedule. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened to my report without moving anything except his eyes. Marla was still there, sitting rigidly, as if leaving the house might trigger the before midnight clause. Wolfe said, "Describe the man." I did. Height, build, hair, the way he walked, the patch on the coat. Wolfe grunted. "A costume, that's what it smelled like," I said. Rudd paid him in a side street. Cash then got something back. Rudd looked relieved. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Relief implies a service. Either he purchased protection or he purchased concealment. Marla's voice trembled. Hal would never. Wolfe cut her off. "Mrs. Dean, you do not know Mr. Rudd. You know his role," I added, and everyone at the shelter answered like they were reading from a script. Nora Spence practically had stage directions. Wolfe nodded once. "Yes, scripts are written by someone with authority, or by someone with fear," Marla whispered. "The man from accounting." Wolfe's gaze shifted to her. "Perhaps, or perhaps Mr. Kells is merely a tool, as your lie is a tool." He leaned back, eyes half-lidded. "We have a shelter safe opened without force. Gift cards vanished. A finance man stabbed. Blackmail notes on fundraiser paper. And now a treasurer paying a man in borrowed city clothing." I said, "That's a cheerful holiday card." Wolfe ignored me. "The blackmailer is inside the charity or inside its operations. He has access to supplies, information, and human weaknesses. He is also arranging external cover, uniforms, authority, plausible movement." I frowned. "Why gift cards? Why not cash?" Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Because gift cards can be moved quickly, anonymously. In small quantities they are money without the weight of money, and they create a virtue veneer. Even theft can pretend to be distribution." Marla's hands tightened. "What will he do to me?" Wolfe's voice went very calm. "He will attempt to bury you under a believable frame." I felt my stomach tighten again. "Frame her how?" Wolfe looked at me. "Your lie placed her in a convenient narrative. Frightened woman, suspicious man fleeing her building, noise complaint, police curiosity. The blackmailer will reshape that narrative into something criminal. He will use Northside Shelter's theft to link her money to missing gift cards. He will use Tom Baird's death to manufacture motive. He will use your lie as a spade to dig the hole." Marla's eyes filled. "I didn't steal anything. Truth is not always the point," Wolfe said. "Belief is," I said. Wolfe, the facilities man, saw me. He smiled. He knew I was watching. Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Then he is not merely hired cover. He is part of the schedule." "What's next on the calendar?" I asked, Wolfe's eyes went flat. Midnight. Marla flinched. Wolfe added, "But he has miscalculated. He believes he is burying you. In fact, by using the shelter's paper and a costume, he has left fingerprints for me." I leaned forward. "Which fingerprints?" Wolfe's gaze held mine. "The fundraiser program stock has a printer. A printer has records. A printer has waste sheets. And a treasurer paying a man in a city coat is either buying silence or buying access." He paused, then said softly, "But with the weight of a verdict, Archie, your lie is being used as a shovel. If you do not wrest it from his hands, you will dig until you strike bone." I wanted to make a joke. I didn't. Instead, I said, "All right. Where do we start?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed with satisfaction, because he likes that question, the one that admits he is right. "We start," he said, "with the paper, and we end with the man who tied the ribbon." Chapter 5 New York in December has a way of making tragedy look accidental. Slush on the curb, headlights in a hurry, a horn that says, "Move," and a body that doesn't. I was at North Side Shelter again before noon, because Wolfe had told me to start with paper and end with the man who tied the ribbon, and because the scheduler's midnight deadline had turned the city into one long ticking hallway. Kramer's plainclothes men were parked across the street in an unmarked sedan, trying to look invisible and succeeding only with people who didn't mind being lied to. Inside, the shelter's lobby had been dressed for charity. The same old pine scent, the same paper, snowflakes taped crookedly to windows, the same volunteer smiles that didn't reach their eyes. When you see people doing good work under fluorescent lights, you want to believe it makes them safe. It doesn't. It makes them convenient. I asked for Seth Ward. The volunteer blinked. "Seth, he's out doing deliveries. Tell him Archie Goodwin wants a word," I said. "Tell him it's about last Christmas Eve." Her eyes widened slightly, recognition not of me, but of the significance. She nodded and hurried off. Hal Rudd emerged from an office with the strained look of a man who has slept in pieces. He saw me and tried to summon authority. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "Inspector Kramer told me not to." "Kramer tells everyone not to," I said. "It's his main hobby. I just want to ask Seth a couple of questions." Rudd's Adam's apple bobbed. "Seth is busy. So are we all," I said. "But people still get murdered." That word landed. Rudd's face tightened. Nora Spence came gliding out behind him, clipboard in hand as if she'd been born with it. Her smile appeared on cue. "Archie," she said brightly, as if we'd met at a brunch and not in the shadow of a stabbed finance officer. "We're doing everything we can to cooperate. We've issued a statement. We've arranged counseling for staff. We're rehearsing grief," I said. "Lovely. Where's Helena Voss?" Nora's smile stayed fixed. "With donors." "And where's Clay Mercer?" I asked. Her eyes flicked. "Quick, downstairs security review." "Of course," I said. "Everyone's always reviewing." Rudd said, too quickly, "Seth will be back soon." I nodded. "Great, I'll wait." Waiting in a charity lobby is like waiting in a dentist's office. You're surrounded by magazines and guilt, and you know something unpleasant is coming. My phone buzzed 10 minutes later. It was one of Kramer's plainclothes men. He'd given me the number with a grunt, and the kind of look that says he expects trouble and wants credit for it. "Goodwin," the man said. "You know Seth Ward." My stomach tightened. "Yes, why?" "He's been hit," the man said. "On 8th, near 43rd. Ambulance is there. Looks bad." Looks bad is the phrase cops use when they don't want to say dead into your ear. I left the shelter without asking permission. Nora Spence called after me. Something about procedure. And I waved without turning. 8th Avenue was busy and ugly, the way it always is when something goes wrong. Traffic crawling, people craning, a small crowd that pretends it's concerned while it feeds on detail. A police car sat at the curb, lights flashing red and blue onto puddles. An ambulance door was open. A paramedic stood with hands on hips, not moving fast. That was the clincher. The body was under a grey blanket near the crosswalk, 1 foot visible in a work boot. A shelter jacket lay crumpled nearby, like something shed. I pushed through the crowd with the confidence of a man who believes his own importance, which is the only way to move through New York quickly. A uniformed cop tried to stop me. I showed my badge, private, not official, but close enough to make him hesitate. "Who is it?" I demanded. The cop's face was neutral, male, 30-something. "ID, says Seth Ward." The words landed like a fist, not because Seth had been a friend, he hadn't lived long enough for that, but because he had been a loose thread, and someone had just cut it clean. A plainclothes man I recognized from the shelter nodded to me. "Driver ran," he said. "Witness says it was a dark van, no plate." "Of course," I muttered. He crouched and lifted the edge of the blanket just enough to show Seth's face. Seth's eyes were half open, fixed on nothing, and his mouth had that faint slackness that makes you want to look away even when you shouldn't. "Hit. And. Run," the plainclothes man said. "Could be accident." I looked at Seth's jacket on the pavement. It wasn't torn, it wasn't shredded. It had been removed, pulled off, like someone had checked his pockets before the ambulance got there. My stomach went colder. "Did anyone touch him?" I asked. The man frowned. "Paramedics checked him. We held the crowd back." "Before that," I said, "when he first went down." The man hesitated. That hesitation is the same everywhere, a cop admitting he wasn't first on scene. "Couple of bystanders," he said. "Guy tried CPR, another guy," he shrugged. "People. People, always people. Always hands." I crouched beside the crumpled jacket. The pocket seams looked slightly stretched, as if something had been in there and was no longer. But one pocket, inner breast, had a small bulge. I slid my fingers in and drew out a metal key on a small tag. The tag had a logo stamped into it, a snowflake. Under it, the words, "Snowbox, Storage," and a number, 214. The plainclothes man raised his eyebrows. "What's that?" "A problem," I said, and slid it into my pocket before anyone could decide it belonged to them. "Hey," he protested. "I'll tell Kramer," I said. "If he behaves," the man snorted. "Good luck." I stood and looked at the crosswalk. The asphalt was wet. The city noise rolled on. A horn blared. Somewhere a street vendor shouted about roasted nuts. The season kept selling itself. Seth Ward had been alive this morning. Now he was evidence. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was in the office as if he had never left it in his life. Marla was still there, now in the yellow chair near the window, hands wrapped around a cup of tea that Fritz had delivered with grim kindness. She looked like a woman waiting for a sentence. Wolfe watched my face when I came in. "He is dead," Wolfe said, not asking. "Yes," I said. "Hit and run dark van, no plate, very seasonal." Marla's cup rattled against the saucer. "Seth." I nodded. "Seth." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "You went to him." "I was about to," I said. "Summonin got there first." Wolfe's voice went colder. "Witness removal. That's how it felt," I agreed, and pulled the key from my pocket. Wolfe's gaze fixed on it immediately. "What is that?" "Snowbox storage," I said. "Key tag snowflake logo, number 214. Wolfe held out his hand. I gave it to him. He examined it with that careful stillness he uses on objects that carry secrets. "This was in Mr. Ward's pocket." "Or what's left of it," I said. "Someone might have tried to clean him out and missed one compartment. Or someone left it on purpose." Wolfe's eyes flicked up. "Which is more likely? Depends," I said. "If the scheduler is smart, he doesn't leave things. If he's arrogant, he leaves them to taunt." Wolfe grunted. "Both are possible." Marla's voice was thin. "Why would Seth have a storage key?" Wolfe looked at her. "Because he transported things. Drivers are often used as invisible hands." Marla swallowed. Her eyes dropped. Then she spoke in a rush, as if the words were poisonous and she needed them out. "After the gala," she said, "I saw cartons being moved. I turned. Cartons of what?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Boxes, sealed. They were brought through the service corridor. Seth was pushing a dolly. Nora was there. She saw me watching and she said, Marla's voice broke. She said, "Forget it. It's not your problem." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Miss Spence said that." Marla nodded, quickly ashamed. I did forget it. I was tired and my father, he was ill and everything was." Wolfe raised a finger. Marla stopped. Breath-catching, Wolfe said, "Your forgetfulness has become expensive." I leaned forward. "Marla, when was this? The night of the fundraiser?" "Yes," she whispered. Late, after midnight, people were leaving. Nora was still there, directing volunteers, smiling. I thought she was just being diligent. Wolfe's voice was flat. "Diligence is often a disguise." I said, "Did you see where the cartons went?" Marla shook her head. "Number, I only saw them turn into the service stairwell." Seth looked nervous. Wolfe's eyes sharpened, because he knew he was moving something he should not. I looked at the storage key again, "And now we have a place cartons can go when you don't want them traced." Wolfe nodded once. "Yes, someone is cleaning the trail." I frowned. "Cleaning it how?" Wolfe's tone was precise. "Tom Baird was stabbed after the safe was opened. Seth Ward has been killed before he could speak. The blackmail continues with deadlines and consequences. These are not random acts. This is housekeeping." Marla's voice rose, panicked. "And me." Wolfe looked at her with that calm that feels like stone. "You are not housekeeping. You are leverage," I said, meaning he's scrubbing witnesses while keeping the lie fresh. Wolfe's eyes held mine exactly. "Your lie remains usable because it has not yet been publicly corrected. It is a loaded instrument on the table. He will use it when the rest of his arrangements are complete." I rubbed my forehead. "Wolfe, if this is inside North Side, and Nora told Marla to forget cartons, and Rudd paid a man in a city coat," Wolfe cut in, "do not try to solve it with a list of suspicions. Solve it with sequence." He tapped the key. "This is sequence." Mr. Ward carried something. Mr. Ward was eliminated. Therefore, what he carried is crucial. Marla whispered, "What was in the cartons?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Not food, not blankets, not toys. Those are obvious and do not require secrecy. The theft involved gift cards, portable value. The cartons likely contain what was stolen, or the records of its movement, or something that ties donors to diversion," I said. "And the program paper proves the blackmailer can reach into the shelter's supplies. He can tie ribbons to safes. He can reach into my life." Wolfe's voice went colder. "He can because you allowed him an opening." "Thanks," I muttered. "That's comforting." Wolfe ignored me. He looked at Marla. "Mrs. Dean, you will answer one question without evasion. Did Nora Spence ever tell you anything else to forget?" Marla's eyes widened. She hesitated, then nodded. Small, miserable. "A week ago," she whispered, "I asked her about a discrepancy in the gala report. I saw a line item that didn't make sense. Facilities coordination fee." Nora said it was normal. She said the city required it. She said. Marla swallowed. She said, "I should stop reading spreadsheets if I wanted to sleep." Wolfe's eyes narrowed sharply. "Facilities," I said, like a man in a city facilities coat. Wolfe nodded once. "Yes." I felt my stomach tighten again, because now the pieces weren't just accumulating, they were aligning. Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled. "Mr. Goodwin, the scheduler is doing two things at once. He is erasing the trail behind him, and he is keeping your lie in reserve. Ready to deploy at the moment it will do the maximum damage." Marla's voice was barely a whisper. "He's going to make it look like I stole from the shelter." Wolfe's eyes held her. "Yes, and if he can attach Tom Baird's death to that theft, he will bury you under a frame so believable it will not matter whether it is true," I said. "And he'll pin my lie to it like a ribbon." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Precisely." I stood. "All right, Snowbox Storage, Unit 214. We go now." Wolfe's gaze lifted to me with faint irritation. "You do not go now. You go intelligently." "Wolfe," I snapped, Seth is dead. Tom is dead. Marla has a clock over her head. How much intelligence do you want? All of it, Wolfe said coldly, because the man who schedules murders relies on panic to make his opponents clumsy. He picked up the phone. I will call Inspector Kramer. He will obtain a warrant for snowbox storage. I stared. You think Kramer can move fast enough to beat midnight? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. If he cannot, then he is less useful than I feared. He dialed while it rang. He looked at me, and his voice softened just enough to be dangerous. Archie, he said, do not misunderstand. Seth Ward was not killed because he knew your lie. He was killed because he knew where the cartons went. The phone clicked as Kramer answered, barking. Wolfe spoke in his calm, terrible tone, and I watched Marla's hands shake around her teacup. Outside, the city was still strung with Christmas lights. Inside, we had just lost another witness, and somewhere, in a warm place with a clock and a plan, the scheduler was turning a page. Chapter 6 Snowbox Storage was one of those new places that looks clean enough to sell you a conscience with your rental agreement. Bright lights, polished concrete, cheerful posters about peace of mind, and a young man behind the counter who smiled as if theft had never been invented. Kramer's warrant made the smile wobble. I'm telling you, the young man said. Hands up. We don't know what's in them. We don't. You don't need to know, Kramer growled. You need to open the gate and stay out of my way. Wolfe had not come, naturally. He had remained at the brownstone with Marla, Fritz, and his dignity. He had also sent me with Kramer because Wolfe believes the police are useful chiefly as moving furniture and signing paper tonight. They were both. I rode with Kramer, two plainclothes, men and Stebbins, who looked as if he'd rather be in a warm room alphabetizing regret. Kramer's jaw worked the entire ride. You happy now? He snapped at me. A guy's dead, a woman's being threatened, and I'm chasing a storage locker because your boss likes drama. My boss dislikes drama, I said. He prefers logic. Drama is what you bring when you enter a room. Kramer grunted. Keep talking. We reached the unit corridor. Long, narrow metal doors like mouths that don't want to confess. The air smelled of cardboard and dust and the faint chemical sweetness of cleaning solution. It was too orderly to be comforting. Unit 214 was halfway down. The lock was a cheap padlock on a hasp. The key Seth Ward had carried fitted perfectly. I used it. The click was small, but it sounded loud to me because everything in this case felt like a clock. I pulled up the door. Inside was a 10 by 10 cube of darkness and stacked cartons. The boxes were printed with toys in thick red letters and had little cartoon bears stamped on the sides. They were taped neatly, arranged in rows, and they looked like the kind of thing a shelter would store in December. They also looked wrong. You get a feel for weight when you've hauled enough boxes in your life. A carton of stuffed animals has a certain slump to it. It gives. It sags. It doesn't sit like a brick. These cartons sat like bricks. Kramer stepped in, scowling. Toys, he muttered. So what? The shelter stores toys. Sure, I said, but these toys are in a storage unit instead of the shelter. One of the plainclothes men lifted a carton and grunted. Heavy. Stuffed bears on a diet, I said. Kramer jerked his head at Stebbins. Open one. Stebbins produced a utility knife, with the anxious care of a man worried it might explode. He sliced through tape. We all leaned in, as if expecting snakes. The flaps opened. Inside were not toys. Inside were stacks of gift cards, bundled tight with green ribbon, the same green ribbon, bright, smooth, neatly knotted into bows, that made each bundle look like a present. If you ignored what the ribbon was doing there, it was almost beautiful. If you remembered Tom Baird in an alley and Seth Ward under a blanket, it was obscene. Kramer stared. You've got to be kidding. I reached in and lifted a bundle. The cards were assorted. Big chain stores, grocery, pharmacy, general retail. Each card had a value printed on it, and the values added up in my head faster than I wanted. The bundle weighed like stolen winter. This is the shelter's Christmas, I said softly. Stebbins swallowed. That's a lot. Kramer's face reddened. "This is the safe," he snarled. "This is the damn safe." I looked at the ribbon again. The bow was too neat. It wasn't tied by a hurried thief, shoveling loot. It was tied by someone who wanted the theft to look like a message. I said, "He's packaging it for resale." Kramer barked. "Resale, gift cards. You'd be surprised what people buy when they think it's a bargain," I said. "And you'd be surprised how clean, dirty money looks when it's shaped like holiday charity." One plainclothes man found a clipboard tucked behind the cartons. He handed it to Kramer. Kramer scanned the sheets, lips moving. "Inventory approvals," he muttered. "Count sheets, sign-offs." He looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. "Signed by Hal Rudd." There it was. Wolfe's walk behind Rudd hadn't been just exercise. Stebbins peered over his shoulder, also a second signature line initialed. "Nora Spence," I said. Kramer swore, low and heartfelt. I pocketed one ribboned bundle carefully, the way you pocket a grenade you plan to hand back. "We need Marla to confirm the safe theft was mostly cards," I said, "so nobody can claim these are leftovers from last year's generosity." Kramer glared. "I'll confirm it with my own eyes." "Sure," I said, "and Wolfe will confirm it with Marla's mouth. He likes witnesses who can't be argued with." Kramer grunted, but didn't argue, which meant he was too busy being furious. We photographed everything, tagged cartons, and sealed the unit the way the law insists you seal things after you've already stepped all over them. Then we hauled the cartons out. It took 4 trips and 3 complaints from Kramer about his spine. The young man at the front counter watched us with a pale face and said nothing, which was smart. Back at the brownstone, Marla was in the front room, looking as if she hadn't blinked in hours. Wolfe was in the office, untouched by the night, his chair holding him like a throne. Fritz hovered, bringing coffee that nobody drank, and making the house feel like a place where normal rules still existed. Wolfe took one look at my face and said, "You found them." I held up a bundle of gift cards tied in green ribbon. "Toys," I said. "Very modern, they don't squeak, they swipe." Marla's eyes widened. "Those are." "Yes," I said, "your shelter's Christmas, packed in a storage locker like contraband." Marla's breath came fast. "The safe, Tom told me. He said most of it was gift cards. We were holding them to distribute to families on Christmas week." Wolfe nodded once. "Thank you. That confirms the nature of the theft." Kramer barged in behind me, like a man arriving at his own rage. "Rudd signed off on inventory," he barked. "Spence initialed. It's all here." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Inspector, you are shouting in my house," Kramer snapped. "You want me to sing?" Wolfe's gaze was cool. "Number, I want you to listen." He gestured, and Fritz and I carried 2 cartons into the office and set them on the rug. Wolfe stared at the toy's label with faint contempt. "An affectation," Wolfe said. "Our scheduler enjoys labeling." Kramer jabbed a finger at the ribbon. "This is your proof. This is enough. It is evidence," Wolfe corrected. "It is not yet enough." Kramer scowled. "How the hell is it not enough? We've got stolen goods, paperwork, signatures. And we have," Wolfe said calmly, "murder, and we have threats, and we have a man who can still bury Mrs. Dean under a story before midnight, if we blunder." Marla flinched at the word midnight. Wolfe's tone softened only in efficiency. "Mrs. Dean, Mr. Rudd approved these inventory movements. Did he ever speak to you about them?" Marla shook her head. "Numberhall barely speaks to me. Nora handles everything public." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Naturally," I said. "Marla also saw cartons moved after the gala. Nora told her to forget it." Wolfe nodded once, filing it. Then Wolfe did the part he likes. He turned an object into a lever. "Inspector," Wolfe said, "you will not remove these cartons." Kramer's face went purple. "The hell I won't." "You will not," Wolfe repeated, and his voice made the room quiet. "Not yet." Kramer stared. "Wolfe, that's stolen property and evidence in a homicide." "Yes," Wolfe said, "and it is also bait." Kramer barked a laugh. Bait for who? For the man who believes he has secured his loot and erased his witnesses, Wolfe said. He will discover the loot is missing, or he will discover it has been moved. Either fact will compel action. Kramer growled, action like killing someone else? Wolfe's eyes went flat. Perhaps, which is why I want the action where I can see it. I leaned forward. You want him to come looking here? Wolfe nodded. Not here, necessarily, but he will seek the cartons, or seek the key, or seek the person who touched them. He will be unable to resist correcting the schedule. Kramer glared. You're using your own house as a trap. Wolfe's mouth tightened. I am using my intelligence as a trap. My house is merely the stage. Your policeman will be the audience. And Mr. Goodwin, he looked at me, will refrain from heroics. Fine, I said. I'll do my heroics quietly. Wolfe ignored that. He looked at the green ribbon again, then at Marla, and his voice was mild but hard. Somebody tied these bows, Wolfe said. Somebody did it with leisure. That person will not tolerate disorder. By bringing the cartons here, we introduce disorder. Marla whispered, and they'll come. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Yes, because they are cleaning the trail, and we have just dragged the trail back into the light. Fritz set fresh coffee on Wolfe's desk. Wolfe lifted the cup, sipped once, and then said, as if concluding a small domestic matter, now, we wait for our scheduler to discover that his presents have been moved. Chapter 7. Waiting in Wolfe's office is never idle. It's merely motionless. Wolfe can sit in his chair like a monument and still manage to make the room feel as if something is happening, mostly because everyone else is vibrating. The cartons sat on the rug with toys stamped on their sides in red, as if bold letters could turn theft into cheer. Fritz had objected to their presence with one glance at the carpet and a quiet inhale, then had said nothing, because Fritz understands that when Wolfe decides to use his own house as a net, Fritz's job is to keep the net clean. Inspector Kramer, however, did not understand nets. He understood clubs. This is nuts, he growled for the fourth time. You've got stolen goods in your office and you're treating it like a chess piece. Wolfe did not look at him. Inspector, he said, you have never seen chess. Kramer's mouth tightened. I've seen men get away. Wolfe's eyes drifted to the green ribbon around a bundle of gift cards. Not tonight. I had been unpacking the cartons the way you unpack a bomb, slowly, carefully, and with a strong desire to be somewhere else. We had photographed the gift cards, counted them in rough stacks, and resealed most of them because Wolfe wanted the bait intact. Then my hand found something that wasn't plastic. Paper. It was wedged under the bottom layer, wrapped in brown craft, like someone had wanted it protected more than the gift cards themselves. I slid it out and opened it. A stack of invoices. Wolfe, I said, your toys come with receipts. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Bring them. I carried the stack to his desk. Wolfe took them with the delicacy he reserves for anything that might be dishonest in print. He didn't read first. He inspected. Paper weight, edges, alignment, the impression of type into fiber. Then he read. The invoices were from a vendor I'd never heard of. Hearth and Harbor Facilities Services. The letterhead had a cheery little logo, two hands holding a house, and the services listed were the kind of bureaucratic nonsense that can hide a fortune: coordination fee, municipal compliance support, temporary storage handling, off-site distribution logistics. Each invoice was stamped paid in red. Wolfe's finger tapped one line. Observe, Mr. Goodwin. I leaned in. I'm observing. The type, Wolfe said. It looked normal to me. Machine. Typed, clean, official enough to fool a donor and dull enough to discourage questions. Then Wolfe slid one invoice slightly and angled it under the lamp. Look at the letter E, Wolfe said. I stared. The E was crooked, tilted slightly left, like a man who's had one drink too many, but insists he can walk straight, not every E, just some. And when it appeared the same way every time, with the same slight lean and a faint shadow at its lower curve. A typewriter defect, I said. Precisely, Wolfe replied. A distinctive one. Kramer snorted. So what? A busted typewriter wrote fake invoices that narrows it down to half the city. Wolfe's gaze flicked to him with mild contempt. Inspector, the city is large. The shelter's office is not. He flipped another page. The invoices are fabricated to justify moving material, gift cards. Off-site, a shell vendor name gives legitimacy. The crooked letter gives identity. I said, You think that typewriter is inside Northside? I am confident, Wolfe said, and I suspect who uses it. Nora Spence, I murmured. Tra, people love letterhead. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Miss Spence controls presentation. A forged invoice is presentation with numbers. Kramer jabbed a finger at the page. We'll subpoena their records, their typewriters. There. You will, Wolfe said, after we acquire the confession that makes your subpoenas inevitable. Kramer glared. You and your confessions. Wolfe's eyes returned to the invoices. This is not merely theft. It is laundering through respectability. Mr. Rudd approves inventory. Miss Spence provides documentation. Someone moves the cartons. Someone eliminates the witnesses. It is division of labor. I started to say something and was interrupted by the doorbell. One sharp ring, then another, then a third, close enough to be a demand. Fritz appeared in the doorway, with that dangerous calm of his. Mr. Wolfe, there is a gentleman insisting he must see you at once. Wolfe didn't move. Name, Fritz's eyes flicked. Mr. Clay Mercer. Kramer stood, suddenly alert. Security boy. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Send him in. Clay Mercer entered without waiting to be invited. He wore the same inexpensive suit, but his composure was gone. His face was tight, his jaw working, and his eyes snapped immediately to the cartons on the rug as if they were stolen from him personally. Which, in a way, they were. He saw Kramer and hesitated a fraction, then decided to pretend he hadn't. Mr. Wolfe, Clay said, voice clipped. Those boxes don't belong here. Wolfe's tone was mild. On the contrary, they were found in a storage unit. They belong nowhere respectable. Clay took a step forward. You can't keep them. That's shelter property. Donor property. You're contaminating. Stop, Wolfe said softly. Clay stopped, as if he'd hit a line on the floor. Wolfe's gaze held him. Mr. Mercer, you have come to demand stolen cartons from a private residence. That is an odd errand for a security man. Clay's eyes flicked to the invoices on Wolfe's desk, then away. I'm protecting the shelter. This will destroy us. Wolfe's voice cooled. Tom Baird was destroyed. Seth Ward was destroyed. Yet you are concerned about an organization's reputation. Clay's jaw tightened. I didn't kill anybody. No one has accused you, Wolfe said, which is always when a man starts sweating. Kramer growled. We can fix that. Wolfe lifted a finger. Kramer shut up, furious. But shut, Wolfe said. Mr. Mercer, answer a question. How did you learn these cartons were here? Clay hesitated. His eyes flicked to me, then to the door, then back to Wolfe. People talk, he said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Who? Clay's throat bobbed. Nora. That came out too easily. Like a man relieved to say a name that isn't his. Wolfe leaned back slightly. Miss Spence sent you. Clay's shoulders rose and fell. She said you were playing games. She said those cartons need to go back before donors hear. Wolfe's voice was quiet. And you obey because, Clay's eyes hardened, because I'm paid. By the shelter, Wolfe said. Clay's mouth tightened. By Nora. That landed Marla, who had been in the side chair near the window, made a small sound. Nora paid you? Clay glanced at her and immediately regretted it. His eyes darted away like a man caught looking where he shouldn't. Wolfe saw it and pounced without moving. You have also been instructed to avoid Mrs. Dean's eyes. Clay's face reddened. I don't know what you mean. Wolfe's voice sharpened. You know precisely what I mean. You have been moving cartons. You have been keeping quiet. You have been helping construct a narrative. Tell me, Mr. Mercer, how many times have you carried boxes, stamped toys that did not contain toys? Clay's mouth opened-closed. He swallowed. Kramer's voice came low, almost satisfied. Say it. Clay's hands clenched. I didn't know what was in them at first, he snapped. I was told it was overflow donations. They needed storage, that's all. Wolfe's gaze was relentless. Who told you? Clay hesitated. Wolfe's voice went colder. Mr. Mercer. Clay exhaled sharp. Nora. She said it was reputation. She said donors panic if they think the shelter's disorganized. She said moving cartons off, site would keep things neat. Neat, I repeated, like tying green ribbons on bundles of stolen cards. Clay flinched. I didn't tie ribbons. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Perhaps not. But you moved the boxes that held them. Clay's voice rose. Defensive. I moved what I was told to move. I'm security. I do what keeps the place running. Wolfe's tone was mild, and therefore deadly. And when Tom Baird began to speak, Clay went still. Wolfe said softly, Did you keep him quiet too? Clay's face worked. No, he rasped. Number. I didn't touch him. Kramer snapped. Clay's eyes flicked again to the door. Fear, not of us, but of someone who might arrive. Wolfe watched him like a scientist watching a specimen approach the edge of a dish. Mr. Mercer, Wolfe said. You are not the author. You are an instrument. Miss Spence paid you to transport cartons and remain silent in the name of reputation. That is your confession. Now give me the next. Clay's shoulders sagged. The anger drained, leaving only panic and the desperate need to survive. I saw the paperwork, he said hoarsely. Hal signed the approvals. Nora typed the invoices. She said it had to look official. She had a guy who could get city coats, keys, access facilities cover, so people wouldn't ask why we were moving stuff at night. The man I tailed, I said. City facilities costume. Clay nodded, once miserable. Yeah, that's her contact. She said, never ask his name. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And Seth Ward. Clay flinched. Seth asked questions. Nora said she'd handle it. Then he stopped, swallowing hard. Then he got hit. Kramer leaned forward, eyes hard. And Tom Baird. Clay's face went grey. Tom threatened to go to the police. Nora said it would ruin everyone. She said she'd fix it. Next morning he was dead. Silence settled in Wolfe's office like dust. Wolfe looked at Clay Mercer as if he had confirmed an equation. So, Wolfe said, Miss Spence controls the story, Mr. Rudd controls the money, and murder controls the witnesses. Clay's voice cracked. I didn't want. Wolfe cut him off. No one wants consequences, Mr. Mercer. They merely arrange them. Kramer stood, satisfied now, reaching for cuffs. All right, pal, you're coming with me. Clay's eyes went wide. Wait, I told you. Yes, Kramer said. And you'll tell it again where a stenographer can spell. Wolfe's voice stopped him. Inspector? Kramer froze, scowling. What now? Wolfe's gaze was steady. Do not arrest Mr. Mercer. Yet. Kramer exploded. Are you kidding me? Wolfe's tone was calm. Mr. Mercer is now more valuable to us uncuffed than cuffed. If Miss Spence believes he has been silenced by you, she will adjust. If she believes he is still free, she will attempt to reclaim control. Kramer glared. You want to use him as bait too? Wolfe nodded slightly. If you prefer, call it strategy. Clay Mercer looked as if he might faint. Wolfe's eyes rested on him. Mr. Mercer, you will remain here. You will do exactly what I instruct. If you attempt to leave, Inspector Kramer will not be gentle. If you attempt to lie, I will be worse. Clay swallowed. What do you want? Wolfe's mouth tightened. I want Miss Spence. And then, as if answering a cue in the very script Wolfe despised, the telephone on Wolfe's desk rang. Chapter 8. The telephone rang with the kind of insistence that suggests it has an appointment. Wolfe looked at it, then at Clay Mercer, then at Inspector Kramer, and I could see the sequence forming in his head the way frost forms on glass. Quiet, inevitable, and cold. "Answer it, Mr. Goodwin," Wolfe said. I picked up. A woman's voice came on, controlled and bright, and for a split second, I could smell perfume and press releases. "Mr. Goodwin," Nora Spence said, "I am told you are at Mr. Wolfe's house." I glanced at Wolfe. His eyes didn't move, but the corner of his mouth tightened, which for Wolfe is applause. "News travels," I said. "We have coffee. Do you want some?" Her voice stayed smooth. "This is not amusing. I want to speak with Mr. Wolfe." "He's here," I said. "He's also expensive. What's your business?" A pause, Teeny. But it was there then. "Mrs. Dean is in danger because of this foolishness. You have brought stolen property into a private home. You have involved the police. You are turning a shelter into a scandal." I kept my voice light. "Nora, we didn't turn the shelter into anything. It was already busy." Wolfe held out his hand. I covered the mouthpiece and handed the receiver over. Wolfe said, "Miss Spence." Her tone warmed by a degree, the way it does when the microphone catches the star. "Mr. Wolfe, thank goodness. This situation is spiraling." "It is merely proceeding," Wolfe replied. "Spirals require confusion. We have clarity." A sharp breath. "Those cartons must be returned. The gift cards, everything, must be secured properly." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Secured where? In another storage unit? Under another label?" Silence, then a careful reply. "In our custody where they belong." Wolfe's voice became mild. "They belong to the donors and recipients, Miss Spence, and you have treated them as inventory. Now what do you want beyond pious noise?" Another pause. I pictured Nora's smile tightening around her teeth. "I want you to stop," she said, and the Polish cracked just enough to show fear under it. Wolfe's gaze drifted to Clay Mercer, who stood like a man wishing he could fold into his own suit. "Stop, what?" Wolfe asked. "Stop pursuing this," she said quickly. "You have made your point. The shelter will correct the problem internally. We will recover the cards. We will cooperate with the authorities. We will—" Wolfe cut her off. "You will do nothing internally except conceal. The authorities will do nothing effectively except blunder. Therefore, I will proceed." Her voice sharpened. "Mr. Wolfe, you are endangering Mrs. Dean." Wolfe's eyes turned icy. "Mrs. Dean is endangered because your enterprise requires a scapegoat." A beat. Then Nora's voice went softer, almost pleading. "You don't understand. Donations stop. The people we serve." Wolfe's reply was flat. "Murder is an inefficient fundraising strategy." "I felt Clay flinch," Nora said. "Low. What do you want?" Wolfe leaned back. "I want truth. I will accept it in one of two forms. A confession from you, or your arrest." Silence again longer. When Nora spoke, her voice was cool as glass. "You will not get either," she said. "Good night, Mr. Wolfe." The line went dead. Kramer exhaled hard, triumphant. "That's enough for me." "No," Wolfe said calmly. "It is enough to confirm that Miss Spence believes she can still direct the story," I said. She sounded like she was trying to put a lid on boiling water. Wolfe nodded once. "Apartment, and she will burn her hands." Clay Mercer swallowed. "She'll kill me," he whispered. Wolfe regarded him. "If she attempts it, she will fail. Inspector Kramer has men outside." Kramer grunted. "I do." Wolfe's eyes shifted to me. "Goodwin, we require a disturbance." "A disturbance," I repeated. "We have cartons of stolen gift cards in the rug and a confession standing by the door. What do you call that?" "A preface," Wolfe said. He turned his head slightly toward the stairs, the way he does when he is thinking of his orchids and resenting the world. "Our scheduler has been careful. He removes witnesses, cleans trails, and keeps your lie in reserve. We must force him to use it prematurely." I frowned. "How?" Wolfe's eyes held mine. "We will announce that you will confess your Christmas Eve lie to Inspector Kramer." Kramer straightened, eyes narrowing. "What?" I barked a laugh. "Wolfe, That's generous. You want me to ruin my own life to trap someone else? Wolfe's tone stayed calm. Your life has already been placed on the table. Archie, I am merely moving it to where it can be seen. Marla, hovering in the doorway of the adjoining room with Fritz's protective shadow behind her, whispered, "No, Archie, please." Wolfe lifted a finger at her without looking. "Mrs. Dean, if you wish to remain alive, you will allow Mr. Goodwin's lie to become public bait." Marla's eyes shimmered with fear. But he said, "Before midnight." "Yes," Wolfe said. "That is why we will make him believe he is losing control before midnight." Kramer's jaw worked. "How do you announce it?" Wolfe looked at me as if the question were childish. "Mr. Cohen." "Of course." Lon Cohen was Wolfe's favorite public trumpet because Lon's news traveled fast and arrived with authority. When he finished, he set the receiver down and said, "By 6 o'clock, Miss Spence and Mr. Rudd will hear that you are going to Inspector Kramer at 9 this evening and correcting your lie in his presence." Kramer bristled. "At 9 where?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Not here, somewhere public, somewhere festive, somewhere a man in a city facilities coat can move without being noticed." My stomach tightened. Wolfe's gaze was steady. "Mr. Goodwin, you will take Mrs. Dean to a place with lights and crowds. You will appear to be leading her to the scaffold. Our scheduler will react. He will attempt to remove her, or to produce a substitute story, or to silence you. Any attempt reveals his hand." Marla's voice trembled. "I can't go out." "You can," Wolfe said. "And you will, because if you remain here, you will remain merely threatened. If you go out under our control, you become an instrument." That did not comfort her, but it made her nod, because Wolfe's certainty is contagious. Kramer growled. "I'll have men, you will," Wolfe said, "but not so many that they frighten the prey into not showing himself. 2 plainclothes, positioned, unseen if you blunder. Inspector, you will be responsible for Mrs. Dean's blood." Kramer's face reddened. Then he nodded once, tight. He was taking orders because Wolfe had made the consequences personal, which is the only way to get a bull to step carefully. By 8:30, the plan had the ugly neatness of a trap. Marla wore a simple dark coat and a hat that looked like she'd chosen it for invisibility and failed. I drove her in my car because Wolfe refused to let her ride in a police vehicle. He said it would render the bait inedible. Kramer's men were in another car, a block behind, and I had the uncomfortable sensation of walking a tightrope with an audience. We went to a tree lot on 8th Avenue, one of those seasonal setups fenced in with plywood, strung with blinking lights, smelling of pine and cold sap, with Christmas music leaking from a tinny speaker. People milled around, tugging on branches, laughing, arguing about height and price as if the world weren't full of knives. Marla stepped out of the car and froze when the pine smell hit her. For a second she looked like she might cry. "It's just trees," I said softly. "They don't testify." Her eyes flicked to me, grateful and frightened. "Archie, if he takes me." "He won't," I said, because saying it was the only way to make it half true. We walked into the lot. I kept her close. Not too close to look like a guard, but close enough that my elbow could touch her sleeve. I pretended to examine a tree, then another, while my eyes were scanning faces, hands, movements. The lot had the usual cast: a vendor in a knit cap, a couple with a stroller, teenagers looking bored, a man in a suit pretending he knew how to buy a tree. And then I saw the coat. City facilities, green, reflective strip, heavy boots. It was the same costume I'd seen when Hal Rudd paid that man in the side street, only now it blended perfectly with the workman setting. The man wore a cap pulled low and carried a roll of twine and a small clipboard, props to complete the lie. He moved toward us with the smooth purpose of someone who has rehearsed. Marla's breath hitched. She saw him too, not recognition, but instinct. "Keep walking," I murmured, and angled us toward the far corner of the lot, where the lights were dimmer and the fence was closer. The man quickened, closing distance without running. His head tilted slightly, as if listening to a cue only he could hear. When he was 3 steps away, he reached out, Not for a tree, not for a rope, straight for Marla's arm. "Ma'am," he said, voice low, "you need to come with me. There's an issue." I hit his wrist with my left hand and stepped between him and Marla with my right shoulder, the way you learn to do when you've been punched for a living. His grip broke, his eyes flashed, hard trained. No surprise. He had expected resistance. He had not expected it to be competent. "Issue," I said loudly, drawing attention, "is you touching a lady without a ring." The vendor looked up. A couple paused, suddenly interested. The man's hand shot toward his coat pocket. I did not wait to see if it was a weapon. I slammed my forearm into his chest and drove him backward into a stack of baled trees. Needles exploded around him. He grunted, and his cap flew off, revealing close-cropped hair and a face that was sharp and mean and entirely unseasonal. He lunged at me. I caught his sleeve and twisted. Hard, he stumbled, and his pocket spilled. Cash, a thick roll, rubber banded, and a folded note. The note fluttered to the ground like a leaf. The man's eyes flicked to it. Panic, sudden and real. He reached for it. I got it first. It was typed on cream paper. The letter E was crooked, and in the center, in blunt capitals, were two words: "Remove her." No signature, no flourish, just the order. The man froze for half a second, then tried to bolt. Kramer's plainclothes men chose that moment to stop being invisible. They hit him from the side, like tackling ghosts, drove him into the fence, and snapped cuffs on him while he cursed and strained. Marla stood behind me, shaking so hard her teeth clicked. I folded the note and shoved it into my pocket as if it might bite. I picked up the roll of cash too, because I've learned that money left on the ground attracts feet. Kramer arrived a minute later, breath steaming, face red with anger and relief. He looked at the cuffed man, then at me, then at Marla, and for once he didn't bark. "All right," he said tightly. "All right. You okay, Mrs. Dean?" Marla nodded, unable to speak. Kramer turned to me. "What'd he drop?" I handed him the note. He read it, and his mouth tightened until it nearly vanished. "Remove her," he repeated. "That's not blackmail. That's a hit." I said, "Scheduling." Kramer looked sick, which on him is impressive. "We're taking him in." "Do," I said, "and find out who paid him." Kramer glanced at the cash. "This will help." On the ride back to the brownstone, Marla sat rigid, staring at nothing. I kept one hand on the wheel and one on my nerves. When we got inside, Wolfe was waiting in the office, perfectly calm, as if we had gone out for milk. He took one look at Marla's face and said, "You were approached." "Yes," I said. "City facilities costume, tried to grab her. Drop this." I handed Wolfe the note. He read it once. Then his eyes narrowed, not in surprise, but in confirmation. "The order is not to frighten," Wolfe said quietly. "It is to remove." Marla's voice finally came, thin and broken. He was going to. Wolfe raised a finger. She stopped, shuddering. Wolfe looked at me, and the cash. I put the roll on his desk. Wolfe didn't touch it. He stared at it with the same distaste he shows cheap cigars. "Payment," he said. "A hired hand paid to turn your kindness into Mrs. Dean's grave." I frowned. "You think Hal Rudd hired him, not Nora?" Wolfe's gaze sharpened. "Miss Spence controls the story. Mr. Rudd controls the money. When muscle appears with cash and an order, it is money asserting itself." He tapped the note lightly. "This is not persuasion. It is disposal. Mr. Rudd has concluded that the simplest way to end risk is to end Mrs. Dean." Marla's hands flew to her mouth again. "Hal, the treasurer." Wolfe's voice was cold. "Do not be naive, Mrs. Dean. Treasurers keep ledgers. Ledgers can become graves." I felt my stomach tighten in a new way, because now we were past embarrassment and into survival. Wolfe leaned back, eyes half-lidded, and said, as if announcing tomorrow's weather, "Now we will invite Mr. Rudd and Miss Spence to my office." Kramer, on Wolfe's speakerphone, barked from wherever he was booking the facility's man. "Invite, Wolfe. We're arresting. Wolfe, cut him off. Inspector, you will bring them to me together. Tonight. If you delay, the scheduler will make another appointment." He ended the call without permission, which is one of Wolfe's hobbies. He looked at me, and there was something in his eyes that I didn't like, because it meant he was already arranging the next trap, and I was already standing in it. "Archie," Wolfe said softly, "your lie was intended to protect her. It has now become the tool they will use to bury her. Therefore you will do the only sensible thing." "What's that?" I asked. Though I could guess, Wolfe's mouth tightened. "You will tell the truth, at the moment I choose." And from the hall, Fritz's voice came, calm as ever, delivering catastrophe like a dinner course. "Mr. Wolfe, there are two visitors, Mr. Hal Rudd and Miss Spence. They are here now." Chapter 9. Hal Rudd and Nora Spence came in together, which told me two things. They had rehearsed the entrance, and they were both afraid of what might happen if they didn't. Rudd's tie was slightly crooked, a little flag of panic. Nora's was perfect, because Nora used perfection the way other people use prayer. Clay Mercer was already in the room, standing near the door like a man waiting to be sentenced. Marla sat in the red leather chair, pale, eyes fixed on nothing. Kramer arrived 30 seconds after Rudd and Nora, because the law is always late and always loud. Wolfe let them all settle into their places without a word. His silence was not patience. It was pressure. Then he said, "Mr. Rudd, you are a treasurer. You will appreciate that our discussion is about accounts." Rudd tried for indignation and produced only strain. "Mr. Wolfe, this is outrageous. The shelter." Wolfe lifted a finger. Rudd stopped. Wolfe continued. "Gift cards were secured in a safe at North Side Shelter. The safe was opened without force. The cards vanished. Tom Baird was stabbed in an alley before he could speak. Seth Ward was killed by a vehicle before he could speak. Mrs. Dean was marked for removal when she became inconvenient. These are not accidents, they are housekeeping." Nora's mouth tightened. "We have cooperated." Wolfe's eyes slid to her. "You have performed." Kramer barked. "Wolfe, get to the point." Wolfe looked at him as if he were a barking dog in an orchestra pit. "Inspector, the point is that Mr. Rudd planned to use Archie Goodwin's lie as a trapdoor." Kramer's face reddened. "Trapdoor?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "If anyone asked why gift cards were missing, the story would become Marla Dean pressured the shelter. Archie Goodwin lied to cover her. Tom Baird discovered it and was killed by emotion, scandal, a mysterious lover, anything convenient. Mr. Rudd would then appear as the conscientious treasurer forced to clean up. Donors would be soothed. The shelter's reputation would be protected, and the money would remain in Mr. Rudd's control." Rudd snapped. "That's insane." "It is," Wolfe agreed mildly. "It is also what you attempted," I said. "Hal, you're going to hate this, but Wolfe doesn't do insane unless it's accurate." Wolfe gestured toward the cartons on the rug. The stolen gift cards were found in a snowbox storage unit, bundled with green ribbon identical to the ribbons tied to the blackmail notes. The cartons were labeled toys, a childish lie. The invoices attached were fabricated under the name Hearth and Harbor Facilities Services, a shell vendor devised to justify off-site movement. Nora's eyes flicked. Rudd swallowed. Wolfe picked up a blackmail note with 2 fingers. Now the crucial point. The notes were typed. The letter E is defective, tilted and shadowed. On every document that defect appears on the fake invoices and on the order dropped by the hired man. Remove her. Clay Mercer flinched at the words. Wolfe's gaze went to Rudd. A defect such as this belongs to a specific typewriter. Rudd's voice rose. "We use computers." Wolfe nodded. "And yet your finance office also contains a manual typewriter, used for signing programs and last-minute forms when printers fail. It belongs to you, Mr. Rudd, because you prefer paper you can hold." Rudd's face tightened. "That's..." Wolfe cut him off. "Inspector Kramer has already had your office sealed. He will retrieve the typewriter. But I do not require it to proceed because the notes contain something more conclusive than a crooked letter. He tapped the paper twice. Spacing your machine's escapement is worn. It produces a consistent narrow gap after capital letters and a slight drift on the second line of any paragraph. That pattern appears on every blackmail note and on the invoices. Kramer stared at Wolfe. You can tell that by looking. Yes, Wolfe said. You cannot, because you are not trained to see. That is why you bring me into your cases, and then complain about it. Kramer opened his mouth, closed it, and glared at Rudd instead. You typed the notes, Rudd's hands clenched. Number Wolfe's voice stayed calm. You did not necessarily type them yourself, but you controlled the machine, and you controlled the money. I leaned forward. We saw you pay a man in a city facilities coat. Rudd's eyes flashed. I paid for protection after the theft. After Tom. Wolfe nodded. Protection from questions. Nora's voice broke in too quick. Hal was trying to keep the shelter afloat. Donors were calling. The board was panicking. We had families expecting cards. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And instead of telling truth, you chose optics. Nora's chin lifted brittle. Optics keep doors open. Optics also keep graves shallow, Wolfe said, until they do not. He turned slightly, bringing Marla into the circle without moving. Mrs. Dean, you saw cartons moved after the gala. Miss Spence told you to forget it. That was not public relations. That was concealment, Marla whispered. Nora's composure finally cracked, not into tears, but into anger, sharp and exhausted. Do you think I wanted any of this? She snapped. Do you think I wanted bodies? Hal told me it would be simple. He said the cards were just floating for a while. He said, we'd replace them after year. End. He said, if donors heard even a whisper, we'd lose everything. Rudd hissed, stop talking. Wolfe's voice came down like a lid. Miss Spence, continue. Nora swallowed, eyes shining now. He pressured me, she said. He said I had to steer it, control the story, keep donors calm. And when Mrs. Dean became dangerous, he said we could make it look like her fault. A rich woman's scandal is always believable. He said Archie's lie was perfect. He said if anyone asked questions, she pointed at me, would be the trapdoor, a neat fall. Everyone would look at you and her, not at him. Kramer's face went an ugly red. You plan to hang this on Goodwin. Rudd's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted, once, to Clay Mercer, as if searching for muscle the way a drowning man searches for air. Wolfe watched him, and when Tom Baird threatened to speak, Nora flinched. Hal said he'd handle it. Clay Mercer's voice came rough. Nora said she'd handle it. Silence tightened. Even Kramer didn't fill it. Wolfe's eyes narrowed to slits. So we have the architecture. Mr. Rudd controls the money. Miss Spence controls the narrative. Mr. Mercer moves cartons, and hired hands erase witnesses. The remaining question is simple. He leaned forward slightly, the motion making the room feel smaller. Who, Wolfe said, stabbed Tom Baird, and who ordered Seth Ward removed? Rudd's face went grey. And I realized we weren't at the end yet. We were at the trapdoor, still closed, still waiting for someone to step on it. Chapter 10. Hal Rudd did not look like a killer. That's the trouble with bookkeeping. It trains a man to move value without moving his face. He sat in Wolfe's red leather chair as if it were a committee meeting, hands folded, shoulders stiff, eyes darting only when he thought no one was watching. But Wolfe watched. Wolfe always watched. It is his single indulgence, Wolfe said. Mr. Rudd, you have now reached the portion of this evening where money will no longer assist you. Rudd's lips tightened. This is all inference. Wolfe's voice was mild. Number it is accounting. He lifted one of the invoices and held it like a priest holding a text. Hearth and Harbor Facilities Services. A shell vendor. You paid it. You signed off on inventory approvals that sent cartons labeled toys into a storage unit. Those cartons contained gift cards bound with green ribbon, the same ribbon tied to the blackmail notes, intended to force Mrs. Dean into compliance, and Mr. Goodwin into confession. Rudd's jaw worked. That proves theft. Not murder, Wolfe nodded. It proves theft and intent. Murder is merely the tool used to preserve theft. He turned his gaze slightly toward Kramer. Inspector, you seized a man tonight in a city facilities coat. Kramer grunted. We got him in a cell. Wolfe's eyes returned to Rudd. That man dropped cash, a roll, bound with a rubber band. That cash was not for charity. It was payment for removal. Rudd's eyes flashed. Anyone could have paid him. Indeed, Wolfe said. Which is why you chose cash. Cash does not leave a trail. Unfortunately for you, you are a treasurer. Treasurers create trails even when they try not to. Rudd's shoulders tightened. I don't know what you mean. Wolfe reached to his desk and lifted a slip of paper I had not seen him take out before. It was small and dull, which meant it mattered. Mr. Goodwin followed you, Wolfe said calmly, and observed you paying a man in a city facilities coat in a side street. You received something in exchange, most likely access keys or a schedule. That man is the same hired cover line you later employed to approach Mrs. Dean under blinking lights. Rudd's voice rose. That's absurd. You can't prove it was the same man. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. I do not need to prove it in court. Inspector Kramer does. He will do so with your bank records. Rudd barked a laugh. Bank records. I used cash. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. Cash must be obtained. Your shelter accounts will show withdrawals timed to coincide with facilities coordination fees and emergency donor handling. Your signatures will be on the approvals. Your initials will be on the requisitions. You are the kind of man who signs because he believes paper protects him. It does not. It records him. Nora Spence, sitting rigidly on the sofa, made a small sound, half sob, half contempt. Clay Mercer stared at the floor as if hoping it would open and swallow him. Marla sat very still, hands clenched together, eyes fixed on Hal Rudd, with a look that was no longer fear but something sharper. Betrayal. Kramer leaned forward, face red. So you planned it. You stole from a shelter. You framed a donor. You threatened a woman, and you hired muscle to knock off witnesses. Rudd's eyes flicked to Kramer. You can't, Wolfe cut in, voice like a door closing. Inspector, do not allow him to shout. It will only make him feel alive. Kramer's mouth tightened, but he waited, because Wolfe's tone made waiting feel mandatory. Wolfe turned to Rudd again. Now let us discuss your cleverness. You selected Mrs. Dean because she had wealth and reputation. You selected Mr. Goodwin because he had lied for her. A lie to the police is a rare thing. It can be used to collapse a man quickly. Rudd's chin lifted. He lied. That's on him. Wolfe's eyes went cold. You are correct, Mr. Rudd. That is why Mr. Goodwin will now correct it, on his terms. I felt the room tilt toward me. Kramer's eyes snapped to mine, hungry. Marla's gaze flicked, pleading. Clay Mercer looked relieved, because any focus not on him was mercy. I stood. Kramer, I said, I'm going to save you paperwork. Kramer barked. About time. I took a breath and told it, not the polished version, not the charity rehearsal story, the truth. Last Christmas Eve, I said. Marla Dean called me. She was scared. She'd been with a man who wasn't her husband. She begged me to help her get home without being seen. I met her near St. Bartholomew's. We ran into you. You asked questions. I lied and said she'd been with me at a charity rehearsal. Marla's eyes filled. But she didn't look away this time. She held it. Kramer's jaw worked. And the guy. I never saw him, I said, but Seth Ward saw Marla that night because Tom Baird told him to meet someone near St. Bartholomew's around 11:20. That's how the blackmailer nailed the time. It wasn't magic. It was inside knowledge. Wolfe's voice came in, quiet and final. Your lie was not the crime, Archie. It was the handle. I nodded once, because if I didn't, I might start defending myself, and that would be pathetic. Kramer's eyes stayed hard, but something in them eased, the satisfaction of finally owning the truth instead of chasing it. All right, Kramer said. That's on record. Wolfe looked at him. No, Inspector. It is now back in Mr. Goodwin's possession that matters. He turned his gaze to Hal Rudd. You intended to use that lie as a trapdoor. If your theft was questioned, you would open it and let Mrs. Dean and my assistant fall through. That would preserve your donors and your money. Rudd's mouth tightened. I was protecting the shelter. Wolfe's voice turned icy. You were protecting your theft. Rudd leaned forward suddenly. Eyes bright, desperate. Mr. Wolfe, you're a businessman. You understand compromise. I can make this disappear. The gift cards can be replaced. The shelter can be made whole. Your assistants lie. No one has to know. Mrs. Dean's reputation can be protected. Name your price. Wolfe stared at him as if he were watching an insect attempt to bargain with a boot. My price, Wolfe said softly, is handcuffs. Rudd froze. Wolfe continued. And a clean confession chain. You will confess to diversion of gift cards, to the fabrication of vendor invoices, to the payment of hired cover, and to the order to remove Mrs. Dean. You will name every participant. You will do it in the presence of Inspector Kramer and a stenographer. You will do it now, while you still have the privilege of words. Rudd's face went grey. I didn't order. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Then explain the note. Remove her. Explain the cash. Explain the storage unit. Explain the dead finance officer. Explain the dead driver. Explain Mr. Rudd. Rudd's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Nora Spence made a small, broken sound. Hal, she whispered. Stop. Clay Mercer swallowed hard. Tell it, he rasped, before they hang it on all of us. Rudd's eyes darted again, searching for escape. There was none. Wolfe had closed every door and left only one. Truth. Rudd sagged. His voice came out thin. I didn't mean any of it to go that far. Wolfe's tone was flat. Intent is irrelevant. Sequence is everything. Kramer stood, and this time, when he reached for cuffs, Wolfe did not stop him. Rudd flinched as the metal closed on his wrists. The sound was small, but it was the loudest honest noise in the room. Marla exhaled, a long trembling breath as if she had been holding it since last Christmas Eve. Kramer jabbed a finger at Rudd. You're talking downtown. Rudd's head dropped. Wolfe watched him with faint distaste and then, as if dismissing a nuisance, turned his gaze to me. Archie, Wolfe said, you chose kindness over truth. Yes, I said quietly. Kindness is an act, but it survives only when truth is the part that carries it home. I didn't have a joke for that. I only nodded because it landed hard and it was meant to. Later, after the police had taken Hal Rudd, after Nora Spence had been led out pale and silent, and after Clay Mercer had been handed over with his own confession to save what was left of his skin, the brownstone settled back into its proper quiet. Kramer later told me they'd staked out the Hudson Arcade ornament display. No one came for the $25,000 because the money had never been the point. Fritz brought coffee. Wolfe went upstairs to his orchids, as if human greed were merely a smell that needed airing out. Marla sat in the front room for a while, staring at the Christmas lights outside the window as if they belonged to a different world. When she finally stood to leave under police protection, she paused by the office door and looked at me. Thank you, she whispered. It wasn't gratitude for the lie, it was gratitude for the ending. I watched her go, then leaned on Wolfe's desk and said, so that's the moral. Tell the truth. Wolfe's voice floated down from the stairs, already distant, already returning to chlorophyll and order. The moral, Wolfe said, is to be intelligent. Truth is merely the most efficient form of intelligence. Outside, New York kept blinking and singing, selling cheer like it always does. This time, at least, nobody in our house would ever hear a green ribbon being tied without listening closely to what it meant.